All right, welcome everyone to a deep dive where we're trying to connect some ancient wisdom with maybe some inspiration for right now. We're drawing from a couple of places today. There's a really thoughtful daily devotion, and we're pairing that with the liturgical readings for July 7th, 2025. So that means we'll be looking at Genesis, the Psalms, and the Gospel of Matthew. And our mission really is to see how things like divine encounters, real compassion, and this sort of call to step up and do something, how they all link together maybe in ways we don't expect.
Yeah.
So the big question is, what are these texts telling us about being seen, about being changed, and maybe about being sent out? Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, it's a great set of readings. We're going to start, I think, with Jesus and his just profound compassion. Then we'll look at this pretty urgent call for people, for us to get involved. And then kind of fascinatingly, we dive into this story about wrestling, literally wrestling with the divine and how that totally transforms someone. The idea is that each text sort of shines a light on the others, giving us a much richer picture of, living with purpose and compassion. So where do we first see these themes really starting to come alive in the readings?
Right away in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 9, verses 32 to 38. It kicks off with this scene. A man who can't speak, they say he's demon-possessed, is brought to Jesus. And boom, it's immediate. The demon's out, the man starts talking, it's dramatic.
And the crowd's reaction.
They're amazed, just blown away. They're saying nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel. You get this real sense of wonder of something unprecedented happening, but, and this is a really sharp turn, you immediately get the contrast.
The Pharisees.
Exactly. While the people are amazed, the Pharisees jump in with this cynical accusation. He drives out demons by the prince of demons.
Wow. Talk about missing the point. Or maybe deliberately twisting it.
It certainly seems that way. They're attributing good to evil, which is, well, quite the accusation. It shows how rigid their views were, maybe threatened. But what's interesting is Jesus, he doesn't even engage with it right then. He just carries on.
What does he do?
He keeps going, town to town, village to village, teaching in the synagogues, proclaiming this gospel of the kingdom, the good news about God's reign, and, importantly, curing every disease and illness. It's this broad, sweeping ministry.
So he's healing individuals, but also teaching communities.
Precisely. And it's in the middle of all this activity, seeing the sheer number of people, that we get this really crucial insight into Jesus's motivation.
Okay.
Matthew says, at the sight of the crowds, his heart was moved with pity for them. And here's the key part. Because they were troubled and abandoned, like sheep without a shepherd.
Ah, that phrase again. It's so evocative. Not just physically sick, but lost.
Exactly. It's not just about the one mute man anymore. He sees the whole crowd's condition. The devotional we're using, Compassion, Harvest, and Hope, really picks up on this. It says, Jesus saw not just one man's pain, but the lostness of the crowd.
It was a sheep without a shepherd. Yeah.
Right. And it highlights this as showing God's deep compassion and authority. It's a really profound moment of seeing the bigger picture of human need.
That makes sense. So he feels this deep compassion, this pity, but it doesn't just stop there, does it? It leads somewhere. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Exactly right. Compassion for Jesus immediately translates into action, or at least a call for action. Right after seeing the crowds and feeling that pity, he turns to his disciples, Matthew 9, verses 37 and 38. He says, basically, look around. The harvest is huge. Absolutely abundant, but there just aren't enough workers.
The harvest meaning people ready for hope, people needing help.
Precisely. It's a metaphor for the vast spiritual and physical needs of the people, ready for healing, ready for the good news. But there's a shortage of people willing or able to do the work. So his instruction is direct. Ask the master of the harvest, meaning God, to send out laborers for his harvest. It's an appeal for more hands on deck.
And that Compassion, Harvest, and Hope devotional, it really brings that call into the present day, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It says quite directly, today we are invited to be his hands and voice, bringing hope, truth, and mercy to a hurting world.
Wow. His hands and voice. That's a pretty big invitation. It sounds potentially daunting.
It is, and the devotional acknowledges that, I think. The prayer included in it gives us some clues about what that takes.
What does it say?
Well, it's a prayer asking Jesus to open my eyes to the needs around me. First step is just seeing it.
Right. Not being blind to it.
And it give me a heart like yours, filled with compassion and courage. So it needs both the feeling and the bravery to act.
Compassion and courage. Okay.
And then there's this commitment to be a willing laborer, serving with love and truth, and crucially, asking for strength to go beyond comfort to follow you in healing and proclaiming the good news.
Go beyond comfort. That feels like the real sticking point for many of us, maybe.
I think you're right. It's often that step outside our comfort zone that's the hardest. We feel the compassion, maybe we even see the need, but actually doing something that stretches us, that takes something more.
Which raises an important question. How do you even prepare for that kind of work, that kind of stepping out?
It's a deep question. And maybe, just maybe, the answer isn't about simple preparation in the way we normally think. Maybe it involves something more intense.
Okay, you've got my attention. How does this connect to the other readings?
This takes us to a really different place, almost jarringly so. We jump back to Genesis, chapter 32, the story of Jacob.
Jacob wrestling.
Yeah.
Right? That's a famous one. Set the scene for us.
So Jacob's in a tight spot. He's sent his family, his wives, his children, all his belongings across the Jabbok River. He's alone at night on the bank, probably feeling pretty vulnerable, maybe scared about meeting his estranged brother Esau the next day.
Okay, so he's isolated.
Completely. And then the text says, some man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. Just out of nowhere, this intense all-night struggle.
It just says some man, not an angel or God.
At first, just a man. The ambiguity is part of it. They wrestle, and this man realizes he can't overpower Jacob. So what does he do?
He wounds him, right, in the hip.
Exactly. He strikes Jacob's hip socket, dislocates it. Jacob's going to limp for the rest of his life because of this encounter. It's a physical marking.
Ouch. But Jacob doesn't give up even then.
No, that's what's incredible. Even injured, as dawn breaks, Jacob holds on. The man says, let me go, for dawn is breaking. But Jacob refuses.
What does he say?
He says, I will not let you go until you bless me. Even in pain, even in exhaustion, he demands a blessing from this mysterious opponent.
Wow. That takes some serious grit.
It really does. And he gets more than just a blessing. He gets a new name. The man asks his name. He says, Jacob, and the man replies, you shall no longer be spoken of as Jacob, but as Israel.
Israel, because?
Because you have contended with divine and human beings and have prevailed. He struggled with God or divine beings and humans and came through. The name itself means something like he struggles with God.
So the struggle itself is key to his new identity.
Absolutely. It's not about avoiding the struggle, but grappling with it, enduring it. And Jacob recognizes the magnitude of this. He names the place Peniel, face of God. He says, because I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared. He knew who he was wrestling with by the end.
Face to face with God, wounded, but gets a blessing and a new name. That's intense.
It's incredibly intense. And that physical limp, the text notes, is why to this day the children of Israel do not eat the sciatic muscle. It's this permanent reminder woven into their very tradition of this transformative, painful encounter.
What's fascinating here is,
Yeah,
that link between a really difficult, even painful struggle and this deep, lasting change. It wasn't easy preparation.
Not at all. And we hear echoes of this kind of encounter, maybe the longing for it or the peace after it, in the responsorial psalm for the day, Psalm 17.
How so?
Well, the refrain is, in justice I shall behold your face, O Lord. That desire to see God's face, like Jacob did at Peniel.
Oh, okay.
And there's another line in the psalm, on waking, I shall be content in your presence. It suggests this sense of peace or fulfillment that comes after the seeking, after the struggle perhaps, after beholding God.
It's interesting how that shepherd idea keeps popping up too. We had it with Jesus seeing the crowds
Right.
in the devotional.
Yeah.
And then the Alleluia verse brings it back again
Yeah.
from John's Gospel.
Yeah, John 10:14. It's very direct. I am the good shepherd, says the Lord. I know my sheep and mine know me.
So how does that connect knowing his sheep, being known by them?
Yeah.
How does that fit with the compassion, the call to work, and even Jacob's wrestling match?
Well, if we try to tie it all together, that verse reinforces the why behind Jesus's compassion. He sees the crowds as troubled and abandoned, precisely because he knows them, like a shepherd knows each sheep.
It's personal.
It's deeply personal. This knowing and being known is, you could say, the foundation. It's why he cares so deeply, why he calls for laborers. It's not just about fixing problems. It's about relationship, about guidance, about belonging.
So even when you're called to step out of your comfort zone or when you're in that wrestling phase,
Right. The idea is you're still known. You're still part of the flock under the shepherd's care. That relationship provides a grounding, maybe even in the midst of difficulty or the challenge of the harvest. It connects the compassion, the call, and the transformation.
Okay, so this deep dive has really taken us through some powerful ideas. We started with Jesus's incredible compassion for people who seem lost.
That deep pity that moved him.
Then the urgent call for us basically to roll up our sleeves and become laborers in this harvest of hope.
Have to be his hands and voice.
And finally, this intense story of Jacob, showing how wrestling directly with the divine, even when it's painful, can utterly transform us.
Leading to a new identity marked by the struggle.
So what does this all mean when you put it all together for us listening right now?
Well, I think it suggests there are different ways to engage with God with the divine call. It might be through quiet acts of compassion, answering the needs you see right around you.
Okay.
Or it might be stepping up more publicly, joining in that harvest work in a bigger way.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it might be through those really personal, intense periods of struggle, of wrestling with faith, with doubt, with life's big questions, our own Peniel moments. But the underlying message seems to be an invitation. Engage. Engage directly. Let these encounters, whatever form they take, actually change how you live.
And there's comfort in that too.
Definitely. Remember that line from Psalm 34, which the devotional highlighted? The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. So even in the struggle, even in the harvest work, which can be tiring, there's this promise of presence and closeness.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, drawing from everything we've talked about. Given that the harvest seems so big, and maybe the workers feel few, and knowing that encountering the divine, even in struggle, can be transforming, what specific needs around you right now might be calling for your compassion, for your courage? What might it look like for you today to step just a little bit beyond your comfort zone to bring some hope?